Hello, 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 my urbanites. How are you doing tonight, this evening, depending on where you are? Welcome to Urban Suites. Take my glasses off because I'm not reading, but I will need them a little later. So, welcome to Urban Suites. I am Dr. Lisa Lacan, and we're going to have fun tonight. So, I'm going to wait for more people to come on. But in the meantime, I want you all to, when you come on in, I need you all to like, I need you all to share and to subscribe. And then we're going to dig into the nitty gritty of what we're here to talk about tonight. But before we begin, listen up.
Stand up. Somebody needs to speak. Hands up, whoa. Hands up.
Come on in, come on in, come on in.
Man up. Time only listen when you gotta man up, bro. Bands up. All it cares about how your bands look.
So how was everyone's day today? I hope you all had a wonderful day. You all know that I had my breast exam. So tonight we're going to talk about mammograms, mental health. Oh my. Now you may be asking, well, isn't that a big stretch, mammograms and mental health? But no, it's not a big stretch because there is a connection. And I'm going to show you what the connection is. I'm going to inform you. So if you have pen, paper, you need to take it out because we're going to learn a lot about fear and anxiety. And oftentimes when we're waiting for news to come, we do get a little anxious, right?
Stand up.
That's normal.
Hands up, bro.
And what's going to happen tonight is we're going to, I actually got my results, so we're going to discuss my results. I'm going to share my results with you. And we're going to have a wonderful time discussing issues. We're going to discuss childhood anxiety. We're going to discuss what I found out about the New Jersey Department of Corrections and the youth, the African American youth. So it's going to be very interesting. All right. So yes, I'm just waiting for more people to come on in. Come on in. 5 p.m. I'm like, listen, I'm on time. On time is late for me. So if it were up to me, I would have been here for 45. But I know how sometimes our folks are. So we have to, be on time because sometimes you miss the good things when you're not on time. Correct? All right. So yes. So I'm looking forward to this dialogue. So welcome to Urban Suites on the Urban Twos for Change channel. The first thing I want to do is highlight something. Throughout the course of maybe 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to do a presentation for some preteens and teenagers. They're 9 to 13-year-olds because I am a very active financial member of the finest sorority known to man on the universe. Can you guess? Zeta Phi Beta. Hello. So I did a presentation with the Amiquettes, and they are one of our auxiliary groups, and they're from 9 to 13 years old. And I haven't worked with youth in a very long time. As a matter of fact, I was a little nervous because I'm like, okay, how am I going to keep them engaged? But, I'm a mom, have 4 children. I had a state family registered daycare. So I can put on that hat. And we had a wonderful time. But what that showed me was the importance of talking to our children at an early age about mental health issues, because oftentimes we kind of overlook mental health. I asked some adults about mental health, and they have no clue about mental health. They have no clue about self-care. So my soror, Brittany Harden, she came out with a book. She actually wrote this book. It's called It's Not You, It's COVID. And I think this book is spot on. And I'm speaking to the educators right now because this book needs to be in every school district. So it starts out by saying, I love this. It starts out by saying this: going back to school can be scary. So we're talking immediately about fear and anxiety. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Fear is a typical and a normal emotion that we all experience. We all have fear. But oftentimes, if fear goes unchecked, that's when it becomes a problem. And I'm going to go down to discuss, here we go, the 8 levels of intensity associated with fear. I'm going to talk about that because this is very important. If you don't extinguish the first level, which is trepidation, that's the first level, trepidation. It goes into nervousness. Now, you know what? I know my handwriting is atrocious. I'm a left-hander. So I write with my left hand and I do my best. So bear with me. So that's why I'm reading it, because I know you all probably cannot understand my handwriting, but that's all right. I'll read it for you. The first level is trepidation. So trepidation typically talks about the sense of awareness that something's not right. It's like a uh-oh. Sort of like when Spider-Man has that tingly sense. So that's what's happened. That's trepidation. The second one, if trepidation is not extinguished, is nervousness. We get a little nervous, like, oh my gosh. So in nervousness, and I talk about this in the podcast, nervousness is when our cognitive realm starts to kick in. It starts to kick in, right? So our imagination starts to happen. We start to think, okay, what could possibly be going on? Now, if nervousness is not extinguished, we have anxiety. And this is where some of us are. Some of us stay right here with anxiety. And for children, anxiety is a big thing, but we need to address it, because what happens with children, if anxiety is not extinguished, they grow up and they can become diagnosed with several things. They can experience social anxiety. They can experience separation anxiety, and then they can experience general anxiety. And then oftentimes they put these little babies on medication. And sometimes medication is not warranted. If we understood how to respond effectively to those 8 levels. So after anxiety, if anxiety is not extinguished, we actually have dread. And that's when we have the thought of, this thought that I have is not going away. So that's what that next level is. And then after dread, we have desperation. Desperation when you feel hopeless. And the flip side of hopelessness, especially for the urban community, is rage. Oftentimes we feel so hopeless that we don't know what to do. But then what happens is our behavior starts to kick in, and it looks like rage. That's when we can or will engage in criminal deviant behavior, because we really feel hopeless. All right. And then the next one after desperation is panic. I hope you can see this, but I'm telling you, it's panic. All right. So panic. How many of you all have had panic attacks? Panic attacks happen, and it's from also a physiological thing where your heart starts beating very fast. You start to sweat. You don't know what to do. Some people throw up. Some people pass out. And you do all of this because of your thoughts. Because guess what? You thought something was going to harm you. Just like in this book, It's Not You, It's COVID. She says, going back to school can be very scary. And this is what we have a tendency to do. Something that is new, something that we're experiencing. Our little children, this is the first time in their lifetime that they have been through a pandemic. And this is the first time in my lifetime that I have been through a pandemic. So we have to be really mindful to assist them to respond effectively to the change that they are experiencing. The next one outside of, panic is horror. Horror is terrible. You have images in your mind that there's no way out. And that's what happens when you reach this horror state. You have no way out. You have no tools to use, and the tools that you use aren't based on self-care. They're very destructive to you, and sometimes you're just stuck. In my podcast, I really talk about the whole thing. I lay it out so that you'll have a clear understanding of these 8 levels. And then the final level is terror. Terror is when we believe there's absolutely no way out. And then this is when teenagers, because the anxiety was not addressed properly, where they start to think about harming themselves. That's the suicidal ideation, where they start to think, how, how should I harm myself? And then the next stage for that is they try to attempt. So that's suicidal attempt. And then unfortunately, if the attempt is successful, they have killed themselves because of the thoughts in their mind. And oftentimes it starts being a little child. It really does. So we need to have this book, It's Not You, It's COVID, by Brittany Harden, in the school districts. I know a lot of educators. We have to have this book. If Heather Has Two Mommies was implemented in the school district, this book should be too. It's Not You, It's COVID, a self-help children's book on how to effectively respond to COVID-19. All right, so next up, I talked about anxiety and depression in children and how it goes, further. So with that said, I'm working on a project right now. So I'm looking at data. So I ran across something that was very interesting this past week. And I want you to remember this number, 72%. Okay. What did I say? I said 72%. Do you know what that number is in the state of New Jersey? Well, you probably don't. So I'm going to tell you what that number is in the state of New Jersey. That number is the number of Blacks in the youth complex under the New Jersey Department of Corrections. 72% of the youth in the youth complex facilities in the state of New Jersey are Black. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. 72%. So this is why I have forums like this, because 72% is almost 3 out of every 4 youth in the facility in New Jersey is Black. So you have Black, 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 Hispanic, Black, 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 White, Black, 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 Hispanic, Black, 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 White. I mean, what is happening with our youth? And I'm going to bring up this book again. We don't know how to properly, here's the book, we don't know how to properly and effectively respond to anxiety. We have to put this in a school district. Every school district needs to have this, especially those school districts in the urban area. All right, so that's next up is what I came to talk about. All right, so let me recount for you the 8 things, okay? Number 1, trepidation, right? Number 2, nervousness. Number 3, anxiety. Number 4 is dread. Number 5 is desperation. Number 6 is panic. Number 7 is horror. And number 8 is terror. And these are the 8 levels of intensity associated with fear. And if one of these levels is not extinguished, it moves on and on and on and on. All right, so I have a question for you. What organ of the body gives pleasure and sustenance at the same time? Very good question. What organ of the body gives pleasure and sustenance at the same time? Do you want to know what it is? It's the adult female breast. Hello? Duh. Come on now. It's the adult female breast. It gives pleasure and sustenance pretty much at the same time. Well, sometimes, but you know what I mean. So I had my mammogram done today, and I need to ask the doctor, is that the only organ of our body that gives pleasure and sustenance? Because I don't think any other organ does that. Anyway, I don't know. But I went to get my mammogram done today, and because of my age and everything, I do not have a family history of breast cancer. I do have family history of cancer, different types of cancer, not breast cancer. So I went to get my exam, and I was a little nervous. I don't know why. I was maybe number two. No, number one, between number one, trepidation, and number two, nervousness. I don't know why. I guess, as you get older, and people that have, gone to the breast centers and they come back and stuff has happened. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's all in my mind, right? So I was to get my results in 48 hours, but they came back today and they came out normal. Thank God. They're normal. But it's interesting because I have been doing some research about African American women and our incident rate versus our mortality rate when it comes to breast cancer. And I guess the question that I have for, my urbanites, I'm going to call you my urbanites, is how come our mortality rate is far greater than white women? And then oftentimes our incident rate is a little lower, but we die at a greater rate, but we are lower. It's interesting. So I have this statistic. I had to put on my glasses because I can't see really without it. It's this small print. So this is from Clinical Review and Addition. This is in JAMA, Health Disparities and Triple Negative Breast Cancer in African American Women. So they break it down based on age, okay, and the incident rate. So among age 35 to 39, 70.6 for African American women and 59.9 for white women, because they compare African American women to white women. All right. So this is just the incidence. Okay. So basically, 40 to 44 is 118 to 122. So 118 is Black, African American, and then 122. This is per 100,000. Okay. So this is interesting. Age 45 to 49 for African American is 180. But for white American women, it's 188. But then in my age group, the 50 to 54, it really jumps up to 231 African American. And then the white women, their numbers jump up also to 220. I'm like, what is happening between 50 and 54? Like, why is the incidence much higher? That's a large leap. And then it goes up and up and up. So 55 to 59 for African American women is 270. To white women, white Americans, is 260. And then for 60-year-olds to 64 is 332 for African Americans. And then for white American women, it's 332. So it's like it's kind of even right there, right? Which is interesting. And then 65 to 69-year-olds for African Americans is 399. And for white Americans, it's 428. So they have reported more. Now, I don't know if it's because they go to the doctor more. I don't know. But interesting enough, with the mortality rate, even though we had lower numbers of having cancer, breast cancer, the mortality rate is much greater. At the age of 65 to 69, the mortality rate for African American is 80.4, and for white Americans, it's 62. So it's like, this is really interesting. And of course, this is per 100,000. This is alarming. This is not good. For my age group, 50 to 54, it's 47.3. And for white American women, it's 27.3. So that means we are dying at a far greater rate than white American women, even though we have been diagnosed oftentimes at lower rates. Our mortality rate is far greater. So, what's happening with us? What's happening? Do we not get examined? According to this, it looks like we get examined. Do we not follow the doctor's instructions? I don't know. But oftentimes, is it our diet that's contributing to the mortality rate versus their diet? There could be so many things involved in this. But what I came to talk about is how this can be a major stressor and fear. Sometimes you may not want to get the breast exam because you're fearful of the result. I mean, that is a scary thing when the doctor says, okay, it's time for your breast exam. And especially if you have a history, a family history of, breast cancer, it can be like, okay, do I really want to find out or not? Well, I think you do want to find out because you want to have one, peace of mind, knowing if you don't have it, that's peace of mind. Number two, if you do have it, hopefully you find out early enough where you can fight it and attack it. And maybe that's what the issue is. Maybe we're going and having our exams later, and it spreads. I don't know, but I do know that our mortality rate is far greater. And I know that oftentimes if we don't get the breast exam in time, it wreaks havoc. It can wreak havoc on our lives. It can wreak havoc to our families. So I really urge and encourage everyone, every woman to get a breast exam, because if you don't, you just never know. You just never know. We're dying because we're not taking a 10-minute exam. And even though they do squish down and, it's, anyway. So my next exam I have here is my colonoscopy. So I will be doing that, starting my colonoscopy journey next week. Oh gosh, I've heard about that one. It's like, oh Lord. Woo! All right, so colonoscopy coming up next week. So I'm glad my results came back. Like I said, the wait, the anticipation of like waiting 48 hours at least, but it came back in a couple of hours and I am normal. And I thank God for that. But I also want to stress the importance of getting the exam. Like I said, our breast is it gives pleasure and it gives sustenance. I nursed my oldest son for a whole year. I mean, and the form of giving pleasure. Ladies, I've seen you get in the clubs, showing your professional cleavage, so you use it to your advantage. But if you don't take care of it, if you don't get them examined, you never know. It can become very toxic and it could actually end up being the death of you. So I encourage you, please, please, please get the exam. If you have Medicaid, I do believe those exams are covered. They're free. If you're on Medicaid, I believe those exams are free. Those are free exams. There's no excuse. All right? Go to your OBGYN to get a referral so you can go and get your breast examined. All right? So, with that said, for information, you can go to the American Cancer Society. And on that website, they have different things with type of different cancers because people can live in different states. I don't know what state you're from, where you live, or, but definitely I encourage you. And until next time on Urban Suites, take care, be safe, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to test you next week. I'm going to test you on those 8 levels of intensity associated with fear to see if you were paying attention. Okay? So anyway, have a wonderful, safe weekend. Bye.